In my last life, my sister Serena Vega ran to Monaco the night before her wedding, and my family shoved me into her dress before dawn. Damian Lucchese, the young Godfather of New York, had been waiting at the altar for her. The moment he lifted my veil and saw me instead, the warmth in his eyes went cold. For 5 years, I was his hidden wife. The underworld knew he was married, but no one knew to whom. My parents blamed me for stealing Serena's place and still failing to keep his heart. Then Serena came home. That Christmas, Damian took her and my parents to his mountain estate. When a blizzard hit, his men rushed everyone onto the helicopter. No one remembered me. I died in that frozen house, 3 months pregnant with Damian's child. When I opened my eyes again, Serena had just returned to New York. This time, I would not beg for love. Only when I truly walked away, none of them had the right to regret it. Mrs. Lucchese, congratulations. You're 12 weeks along. The family doctor slid the report across the desk. He kept his voice low, but he couldn't hide his excitement. The heartbeat is strong. This child means a great deal to the Lucchese family. The nurse had already picked up the encrypted phone to call Damian. I reached over and pressed the receiver down. Don't. The room went still. They didn't understand. The Godfather's wife carrying his heir should have been enough to bring half the family to its knees. But I knew better than anyone that if Damian found out now, this baby would be dragged into Serena's mess with me. In my last life, I had already let my child die once. Seal today's record, I said, folding the report and slipping it into my bag. No one hears about this except me. When I left the medical wing, Lucchese Manor was being dressed for a welcome party. White roses lined the halls, guards pinned silver wolf badges to their jackets, and every window in the main house blazed with light. Serena was back. The sister who had run from the altar forced me into her wedding dress, and still somehow remained the daughter everyone loved had finally returned to New York. I entered the code at the front door. Red flashed on the screen. Denied. I tried again. Denied. In my last life, this had happened too. The day Serena came home, every code in the manor changed. The front door, the wine cellar, the private elevator. Everything was reset to her birthday. I typed in 604, Serena's birthday. The door opened. I had barely stepped into the foyer when a leather folder struck my forehead. Blood slid down my brow, but my mother didn't even blink. "Sign it," she said coldly. The papers scattered across the marble floor. The first page read, Marital Dissolution Agreement. My father sat by the fireplace with a cigar between his fingers. If Serena hadn't had an accident 5 years ago, what made you think you had any right to marry Damian? She's back now. Give her back the title of Mrs. Lucchese. Serena stood on the staircase in a white dress, her curls loose and her eyes wet, looking like a flower the whole world existed to protect. "Eve, I didn't come back to steal anything, but if you're willing to let go, I'll always remember what you did for me." In my last life, I had broken down at those words. I had knelt in front of my parents and asked them why they were doing this to me. This time, I bent down and picked up the papers. Pen. Everyone in the foyer froze. My mother's face tightened. "What game are you playing now?" I took the pen and signed on the last page, Eve Vega. 5 years ago, I had used that name to marry into the Lucchese family for Serena. 5 years later, I would use it to walk out with my own hands. Serena snatched the agreement from me. Once she checked the signature, she couldn't quite hide her smile. "How sweet of you, Eve." She pushed the folder back into my arms and lowered her voice so only I could hear. "But you'll get Damian's signature yourself. I don't want to bring it up and look desperate as if I'm dying to steal your husband. 3 days. Get the divorce done, then disappear from this house and from his life." I looked at her and nodded. "Fine. I've wanted that for a long time." Half of my room had already been cleared out. Serena's champagne-colored gowns hung in the wardrobe, and her perfume bottles sat on my vanity. My books, photographs, and old coats had been thrown into cardboard boxes in the corner. This bedroom had a new mistress, before the old one had even left. I opened my suitcase and packed what was left. 5 years of marriage fit into half a case. That was almost funny. The moment I zipped it shut, the door opened. Damian stood in the doorway in a black three-piece suit, silver wolf cufflinks at his wrists, his expression sharp enough to cut. His gaze dropped to the suitcase, and his face darkened. "Where do you think you're going?" Before I could answer, Serena slipped out from behind him and grabbed my wrist. "Eve, I only came home to see Mom and Dad. Are you really leaving because of me? Do you still blame me for not marrying Damian back then?" Damian gave a cold laugh. "I didn't know you had it in you to throw a tantrum like this." I looked at him. This was the same man who had once stayed up all night when I had a fever. Once, when a branch wife mocked me under her breath, he made her kneel on a dock until dawn while the sea wind tore through her coat. He had not always been cruel to me. That was why I had mistaken scraps of warmth for a lifeline in my last life. I had clung to them until they strangled me. Damian lifted his hand, and his underboss took my suitcase from me at once. "Tonight is Serena's welcome party. You are her sister, and you are not going anywhere. Change your clothes and stop embarrassing the Vegas and the Luccheses." Serena touched his sleeve. "Don't be so harsh. Eve is still your wife." The word wife fell into the hall, and everything went quiet. Damian glanced at me as if he wanted to explain something. In the end, his voice only hardened. "Go inside." I didn't argue. I took another document from my bag and handed it to him. Serena's face changed. Before she could speak, I said, "Serena just came back. She doesn't have anything strong enough to get her a seat on the Vega board. I want to transfer my shadow shares in the port to her. I need your signature to confirm it." Damian frowned. "Do you know what those are worth?" "I do. 3 shadow shares, 2 shipping routes, and at least 2 billion in clean value." "Yes." He stared at me, and for the first time that night, something moved in his eyes. "And you're willing to hand them over?" "There's nothing I can't let go of." After all, I was letting go of him too. Damian picked up the pen and signed without reading at all. The real divorce agreement was tucked between the authorization papers, and now his signature sat on the final page. I put the folder back in my bag and turned to leave. Behind me, Serena asked sweetly, "Damian, aren't you being too cold to her? She has been married to you for 5 years." After a moment of silence, Damian said, "She was never supposed to be in that position." My steps paused. He used to say he kept me hidden because his enemies would target me. I believed him. I had even been grateful for his protection. So it had never been protection. I had simply never deserved to stand beside him. Back in my room, I locked the door, slipped the signed divorce papers into my bag, and tucked the pregnancy report beneath them. "Baby," I whispered, resting a hand on my stomach, "we're leaving soon." The welcome party was held at the Lucchese Club in Manhattan. From the outside, it looked like an abandoned theater. Inside, it was filled with New York's most respectable criminals, politicians, lawyers, dock bosses, bankers, and every ally Damian needed to keep his throne. In 5 years, he had never thrown a public dinner for me. Serena came home, and he gave her the whole city as an audience. She entered on Damian's arm, wearing the Lucchese obsidian pendant at her throat. It was the symbol of the Godfather's wife. 5 years ago, Damian told me it was too dangerous to wear in public and locked it in a safe. He had never put it on me. Now it rested against Serena's collarbone. Whispers moved through the crowd. "So she's the real one." The Godfather kept the wife hidden for 5 years because he was waiting for the younger Vega daughter. We'd better start calling her Mrs. Lucchese. My parents stood in the middle of the room, smiling with a pride I had never received from them. Years ago, when they tried to brag about my marriage, Damian warned them to stop. They lost face because of me, so they hated me even more. Tonight, Serena was finally giving them the glory they wanted. Damian raised his glass. "Serena has been away from New York for too long. From tonight on. She remains the jewel of the Vega family, and someone the Lucchese family will protect." Applause thundered through the club. Serena took the microphone with tears in her eyes. The person I want to thank most is my sister. Eve carried so much for me, and she has always been willing to give me the best of everything. Without her, I wouldn't be here today. Every face turned toward me. I stood behind a pillar on the second-floor balcony and lifted my glass. Welcome home. The calmer I was, the more disappointed Serena looked. The gifts came next. My father gave her a yacht. My mother fastened our grandmother's sapphire necklace around her neck, the necklace that should have gone to the eldest daughter. At last, Damian's underboss wheeled out a black velvet case. Inside was the deed to the San Lorenzo winery in Tuscany. It was not just a vineyard. It was the cleanest public face of the Lucchese fortune. Serena threw herself into Damian's arms and cried right on cue. The room cheered. When it was my turn, I asked a waiter to bring over a narrow mahogany box. A welcome-home gift. Inside, there should have been a ruby bracelet. It was the first thing Damian had given me after our wedding, and I no longer wanted it. Serena opened the box in front of everyone. The bracelet was gone. On the velvet lay a blood-stained silver bullet, pinned beneath a black card with one sentence written on it: "Imposter. Pay what you owe." The hall went dead silent. Then someone screamed. Serena stumbled back with a hand on her stomach, her face bone-white. "Eve, why would you scare me like this? I only wanted to come home." My father slammed his glass down. "Eve, she is your sister." My mother rushed in front of Serena, sobbing as if I had put a knife to her throat. "You can't stand that people love her. You can't stand that Damian cares about her, so you had to ruin her night." I looked at Serena. She was crying in Damian's arms, but for half a second the corner of her mouth lifted. I understood. She didn't just want my place. She wanted to make sure I could never come back from this. "Someone switched the box," I said. My voice vanished under the noise. Damian held Serena close and looked at me as if I were staring down the barrel of his gun. "Eve, I thought you at least had a line you would cross." I tried to explain, but one of the Lucchese guards shoved through the crowd. In the chaos, he moved as if he were protecting Serena, then slammed his shoulder straight into mine. I fell backward and struck the champagne tower. Glass burst across the floor. A shard opened my calf, and the edge of the table drove into my lower stomach so hard that pain shot up my spine. Someone gasped, "She's bleeding." Damian looked back at me. Only once. Serena cried against his chest. "Damian, my stomach hurts." So he turned away, lifted her in his arms, and left. The doctors, guards, and his underboss followed him out. I slid to the floor, one hand braced against the table leg, while my mother's voice cut through the room. "Karma, that's what this is. In my last life, it had been snow. In this life, it was blood. As long as Serena was there, they would always leave me behind." A stranger from the party took me to St. Anne's Hospital. The Lucchese family controlled the place, but when the nurse pushed me into the emergency room, it was almost empty. She made 3 calls. With each one, her face grew paler. The trauma surgeon and the head of obstetrics were called to the top floor. Miss Serena was frightened, so the Godfather wants a full examination. Blood seeped from my leg into the sheets. Pain tightened low in my stomach again and again. I caught the nurse's wrist. "Don't let them know I'm pregnant. Save my baby." She froze, then nodded with red eyes. Before I passed out, I thought I heard Damian's voice at the end of the hall. "Where is she?" Someone answered, "Sir, Miss Serena is still waiting for you." His footsteps stopped for 1 second, then moved away. When I woke up, 2 days had passed. The nurse told me that if I had arrived 10 minutes later, the baby would have been gone. There were no missed calls from Damian, no message, not even a question. Only 2 new alerts waited inside my encrypted app. The first was a video. In the garage, Serena opened my gift box, removed the ruby bracelet, and replaced it with the blood-stained bullet and the black card. Then she leaned close to a Lucchese guard and gave him an order. When the party fell into chaos, that same guard deliberately drove his shoulder into me. The second file was an investigation. 5 years ago, Serena had not run because she feared marriage. She had stolen the Vega ledger and eloped with the heir of a rival family. Now she was pregnant with that man's child, abandoned, and back in New York because she needed Damian's name to cover the scandal. The last message read, "The private plane is ready. Passport, new identity, and offshore accounts are in place. Say the word and you leave on the wedding day." I replied, as planned. That evening, Serena sent me an invitation. Groom, Damian Lucchese. Bride, Serena Vega. On the back, in her looping handwriting, she had written, "Eve, Damian promised me the grandest wedding in New York. You have to come. After hiding as Mrs. Lucchese for 5 years, you should see with your own eyes which woman he truly can't let go of." I read it once and dropped it into the trash. She had no idea that from the moment I died in that snowstorm, I had stopped waiting for Damian to turn around. The next day, Damian came. He stood beside my bed with faint red lines in his eyes, as if he had not slept for nights. Yet the first thing he said was, "You still won't apologize to Serena." I looked at him quietly. "She was terrified," he said. "The doctors said she can't handle any more stress. You're her sister. Is it really so hard to lower your head once?" "So the wedding is my apology?" I asked. "It's not a real wedding. It's a show, something decent for her to stand on. You're still my wife. That won't change." I almost laughed. His signature was already on the divorce papers. He simply didn't know it yet. At last, he seemed to remember I was injured. His brows drew together. "How's your leg?" "Fine." "You always do this. It hurts and you say you're fine. You're wronged and you say you're fine. Eve, what the hell do you want from me?" In my last life, I had wanted him to claim me, to defend me in front of my parents, to choose me over Serena just once. Now I wanted nothing. "You don't have to do anything," I said. "Show up on the wedding day. Once the ceremony is over, I'll make her move out. Your place won't change." "All right." He froze, as if all the comfort he had prepared got stuck in his throat. His underboss knocked outside the door. "Sir, Miss Serena fainted during the gown fitting." Damian rose at once. "Eve, don't disappoint me again." The door closed. I opened the encrypted chat. "Pick me up at the North Hill helipad on the wedding day." The reply came at once, confirmed. On the day of the wedding, snow covered the private chapel of St. Michael's. Serena walked toward the altar in a priceless gown, holding my father's arm. Damian stood before the priest with the silver wolf badge on his chest, his face colder than the storm outside. I sat in the last row, closest to the door. As the priest began the vows, I looked down at my phone. The blue dot that marked the helicopter had already stopped at North Hill. My father placed Serena's hand in Damian's. "I'm giving you my most precious daughter." Damian did not take it right away. His gaze moved over the guests and suddenly landed on me. It was as if he had finally noticed how quiet I had been all day. Serena whispered, "Damian." I stood and slipped out through the side door. The wind outside was brutal. I walked down the old stone steps toward the helipad. Behind me, another helicopter roared over the chapel. Black envelopes spilled from the sky like some obscene version of snow. Inside every envelope was a copy of the signed divorce page, screenshots of Serena switching the gift box, and proof that she ordered the guard to hurt me. The chapel erupted. I shut off the feed. A silver-gray helicopter waited in the snow with its rotors already turning. My lawyer stood by the open door and held out his hand. "Ma'am, it's time to go." I stepped inside. Before the door closed, I looked down at the chapel one last time. Serena was clutching Damian's hand, and the priest's voice broke apart in the wind. "Damian Lucchese, do you take?" The helicopter lifted off. The roar swallowed whatever answer he gave. I didn't want to hear it anyway. I lowered my head and placed my hand over my stomach. In my last life, I died on a snowy night while they rushed toward their perfect reunion. In this life, I would take my child and fly toward a dawn that belonged to us. For 3 full seconds after the helicopter vanished into the snow, no one inside sent. Michael's chapel moved. Then the first black envelope landed in the aisle. A senator's wife picked it up before Damian's men could stop her. The color drained from her face as she stared at the copy of the divorce agreement inside, Damian's signature sitting clean and undeniable at the bottom of the page. Another envelope hit the front pew, then another. Damian did not move from the altar. Serena's hand was still stretched toward him, her white glove trembling, but he was looking past her to the side door Eve had used. "Seal the doors," he said. Mateo, his underboss, snapped his fingers. Men in black moved down the aisles, but the damage was already done. Phones had come out. Screens were glowing. Serena turned toward the guests with tears shining in her eyes. "This is fake. Eve did this because she hates me. She has hated me since we were girls." Someone near the back laughed under his breath. Damian finally looked at her. "Don't." "Damian, you can't believe her over me. She sent that bullet. She hurt herself to make me look guilty. She's always been dramatic. You know how she is." "I said don't." Damian took the envelope from Mateo's hand and pulled out the printed stills. One showed Serena alone in the service garage, her head bent over Eve's mahogany gift box. Another showed the ruby bracelet in her hand. The last showed her whispering into a guard's ear seconds before that same man drove his shoulder into Eve at the party. Serena saw the pictures and went still. Her father, Rafael Vega, recovered first because men like him never cared what was true until they knew what version would cost them less. He stepped forward with both palms open. "Damian, this is obviously a setup. Eve is angry. She has always been jealous of Serena." Damian turned the photographs toward him. "Your daughter was caught on camera. Choose your next sentence carefully." Rafael swallowed. Beside him, Mrs. Vega gripped her pearls and stared at the floor, already calculating who she could blame once the gossip reached Fifth Avenue. Serena pressed a hand to her stomach. It was the same move she had used at the party, the one that had sent Damian running. "I can't breathe," she whispered. "The baby, Damian, please." His eyes dropped to her stomach. "Whose child is it?" Serena's tears stopped too fast. "What?" "You heard me." "It's yours in every way that matters," she said, her voice breaking right where she wanted it to break. "I came back because I trusted you, because I knew you would protect me." That is not an answer. The guests were watching now, hungry and horrified. Damian had spent his life making powerful people nervous. He had never been the man standing at an altar while the city wondered whether his bride was carrying another man's heir. Mateo leaned in and spoke low. "Boss, we need to move this somewhere private." No, she wanted an audience. Let her have one. Serena's mask cracked. For 1 second, the soft, wounded girl everyone adored disappeared, and something sharper looked out through her eyes. "Don't humiliate me in front of them." Damian gave a humorless smile. "Funny, I don't remember you worrying about humiliation when my wife was bleeding on the floor." My wife. He heard the words after he said them, so did everyone else. A murmur moved through the chapel. Serena flinched as if he had shoved her away. Rafael Vega's face darkened, but he kept his mouth shut. He had just realized the same thing Damian had. Eve had not left empty-handed. She had left with proof, leverage, and enough timing to turn a fake wedding into a public execution. Damian walked off the altar. He did not look at Serena again. "Find Eve." Mateo hesitated. The helicopter didn't file a route. The pilot spoofed the tracker. "Then find the lawyer. Find the doctor. Find the damn snow she stepped on if you have to." "Boss." Damian stopped at the chapel doors. His ring finger felt strangely bare, though he was still wearing the wedding band he had never taken off. In all the chaos, he had not noticed that the other ring, Eve's ring, the one he kept locked in the family safe because it was too dangerous for her to wear, had been missing from the manor for 2 days. She had been leaving long before he saw her stand up. Eve's room was open. The wardrobe was empty except for Serena's dresses, which now looked cheap and desperate hanging there. Damian walked past them to the small wall safe behind the vanity. He had installed it years ago after Eve once joked that every mafia wife deserved somewhere to hide her secrets. At the time, he had laughed and kissed her temple. He had forgotten the safe existed. The code was not his birthday, not Serena's, not the wedding date. He typed in the day. He first brought Eve back to the manor after the wedding. The safe opened. There was no jewelry inside, no love letter, no note begging him to understand. Only a flash drive, a folded copy of their divorce papers, and a trust document thick enough to make his stomach tighten before he opened it. He read the first page, then the second, then he stopped breathing. 3 port routes, 2 clean shipping accounts, a controlling interest in the warehouse union fund, all transferred into an independent trust beyond Lucchese's seizure. Beneficiaries, Eve Vega Lucchese and her unborn child. Damian sat down on the edge of her bed. For 5 years, he had hidden his wife because he thought that was protection. He had told himself the world was too ugly to put her name in its mouth. Now he was looking at proof that she had been carrying his heir, bleeding under his roof, and planning an escape because she believed the greatest danger to her child was him. For the first time in his life, Damian Lucchese had no order to give that could fix what he had done. The Lucchese family could make most problems disappear by morning. Bodies vanished. Witnesses changed their minds. Bank records learned to behave. Eve did not disappear like a problem. By dawn, Damian's phones were ringing nonstop. The first call came from the dock union. A winter shipment was being held because the emergency medical fund Eve had quietly managed was locked behind trust authorization. The second came from San Lorenzo's accountant in Tuscany, who refused to release quarterly numbers without Mrs. Lucchese's signature. The third came from a city councilman who wanted to know whether the Luccheses still had a stable family structure, or if he should start taking meetings elsewhere. Matteo stood in Damian's office with 3 folders under one arm. "You should see this." Damian did not ask if it was bad. Good news did not make Matteo pale. The first folder was Serena's travel history. Monaco had only been the pretty version. 5 years ago, after running from the wedding, she had gone from Monaco to Marseille, then to Palermo, where she met Adrian Rossi, heir to the Rossi crew. She had not run because she was afraid of marrying Damian. She had run with a stolen Vega ledger containing port schedules, payoffs, and names of men who would kill to keep those pages buried. The second folder held medical records. Serena was pregnant, but the dates did not belong to Damian. They did not even come close. The third folder was thinner. That made it worse. "The guard who hit Eve confessed," Matteo said. "Serena paid him through one of Mrs. Vega's shell accounts. He thought he was just knocking Eve down, making it look like panic. He didn't know she was pregnant." Damian's hand closed around the arm of his chair until the leather creaked. "Where is he?" "Alive, for now. Keep him that way until he signs a statement. After that, I don't care if he prays." Matteo nodded, then placed one more envelope on the desk. "There's more." The envelope contained notes from Eve's old meetings, contracts Damian had signed without reading, records of payments she had routed when Lucchese's accounts were under federal watch. He had assumed Matteo handled those problems. Matteo had assumed Damian knew Eve was doing it. She had saved the winery he had given Serena as a trophy. She had negotiated peace with the dockworkers after Damian threatened to break the strike with guns. She had kept Rafael Vega's gambling debts from pulling both families into a war, then let her parents call her useless at dinner. Damian flipped through the pages until one line stopped him cold. "Emergency contingency. If I die or become unreachable, protect child first. Do not contact Damian unless necessary." He read it twice, then a third time. Matteo spoke carefully. "Boss, there's something else you need to know. When Eve was brought to St. Anne's, the ER was short-staffed because you had everyone sent upstairs for Serena. One nurse stayed with Eve off the books. She said Eve begged her to save the baby and keep the pregnancy sealed because, in her words, if you knew, the child wouldn't be safe. Damian stood so fast the chair hit the wall. He found Serena in the east parlor, still wearing white silk, still surrounded by her mother, 2 maids, and a doctor who looked as if he wanted to be anywhere else. She rose when she saw him. Damian, thank God. They've been saying horrible things. I need you to tell them I'm still under your protection. You're under investigation. Her face went blank. Don't be cruel. Cruel was leaving Eve on the floor after you paid a guard to hurt her. Cruel was coming back pregnant with a Rossi child and trying to put my name on it. Cruel was stealing your family's ledger and hiding behind the woman you helped erase. Mrs. Vega let out a thin gasp. Raphael stood near the window, suddenly very interested in the snow outside. Serena looked from one face to another and realized no one was stepping in front of her. I did what I had to do. Adrian was going to ruin me. The Rosses would have used that baby to own me, and Dad would have thrown the to them to save the ledger. Damian, you don't understand what it's like to be a woman in this world. You either get chosen or you get sold. I chose the man strong enough to protect me. Damian's jaw tightened. You chose to burn Eve for cover. She already had your name, Serena snapped. She had the house, the ring, the quiet little life. I had nothing. She should have given it back 5 years ago. It was mine first. No, Damian said. It was never yours. You ran. Serena's eyes filled again, but the tears no longer looked pretty. If you cut me loose, the Rosses will come for me. Then call Adrian. Damian, you don't get to use my wife as a shield anymore. He left her there and ordered every Lucchese guard removed from her door. By evening, Raphael and Mrs. Vega were in his office, trying to salvage what they could. Raphael blamed Serena's fear. Mrs. Vega blamed Eve's silence. Neither of them blamed themselves. Eve should have come to us, her mother insisted. If she knew Serena was in trouble, why did she let it go this far? Damian looked at the woman who had thrown divorce papers at her injured daughter and understood, with a cold disgust that spread through him slowly, why Eve had stopped asking to be loved. She came to you for 28 years, he said. You just weren't listening. After they left, Matteo returned with one small plastic bag. Inside was a silver earring. Damian knew it at once. He had given Eve the pair on their first anniversary. Hidden inside was a tracker, old-fashioned, short-range, the kind of thing he once justified. As protection. We picked it up from a courier leaving JFK, Matteo said. Signal says Lisbon, could be real, could be bait. Damian turned the earring over in his palm. Eve had known about the tracker. Of course she had. She had not been the quiet girl in the corner. She had been quiet because everyone else kept talking over her. Book the jet, he said. Matteo gave him a long look. If she set bait, she won't be where the signal says. I know. And if she is there, you can't drag her home. That landed harder than Damian wanted to admit. He slipped the earring into his pocket. I'm not going to drag her. For once, he meant it. Lisbon did not ask who I used to be. New York had known me as the wrong bride, the hidden wife, the eldest Vega daughter who never smiled wide enough to be charming. In Lisbon, I was Evelyn Vale, a shipping compliance consultant with a clean passport, a rented office above a bakery, and a doctor who called me by my chosen name without flinching. My apartment faced the water. It was small, bright, and mine. I bought a blue kettle, 3 cotton dresses that fit around my growing belly, and a second-hand desk with a scratch down one leg. Every morning, I made tea, answered emails, and reminded myself that peace did not have to feel dramatic to be real. By the 3rd week, my company had 4 clients. All women, all rich enough to be targeted and underestimated enough to need someone like me. Daughters who had been passed over for sons, widows whose husbands' brothers wanted control, mistresses turned business owners who knew exactly how expensive male pride could be. I helped them move money out of dangerous hands and into legal structures no angry man could knock over with one phone call. It turned out I had a talent for building exits. One Thursday, a British broker named Callum Hale tried to test me. He arrived late, looked at my stomach before he looked at my face, and offered 30% less than the fee we had agreed on. "With respect, Ms. Vale, you're new here," he said, leaning back in my office chair as if he owned it. "A little flexibility would help you get your foot in the door." I slid a folder across the desk. "That is a list of the 3 shell companies you use to hide clients from customs audits. Page 4 is the one your wife doesn't know about. Page 7 is the one the tax office would find most interesting. My fee is now 10% higher because you wasted my morning." He stared at me for a long moment. "Who taught you to negotiate like that?" "Men who thought I wasn't listening." He paid before he left. Afterward, I walked to my appointment with Dr. Almeida and let myself laugh for the first time in weeks. The baby kicked during the ultrasound, a tiny flutter against the screen, and I cried in a dark room while a woman I barely knew handed me tissues and pretended not to notice. "Strong heartbeat," she said. "Your child is stubborn." "Good," I whispered. "Stubborn runs in the family." The hard part came at night. During the day, I had meetings, contracts, grocery lists, and the steady rhythm of a life I could touch. At night, the snow came back. I would wake with my hands pressed to my stomach, waiting for cold that was no longer there. Sometimes I remembered Damian carrying me upstairs when I had a fever. Sometimes I remembered him standing between me and a cousin's wife who had called me a cheap replacement. He had not always been cruel. That was the worst part if he had been nothing but a monster. Leaving him would have been easy. So I kept going. I sent evidence to my lawyer in New York. I signed the final trust papers. I filed to cut my remaining financial ties to the Vega family. When my mother called from a blocked number, I let it ring until it died. When she called again, I blocked that too. On a gray afternoon near the end of my first month in Lisbon, I came home from the clinic with a paper bag of oranges in one hand and the ultrasound photo tucked inside my coat. A black Bentley was parked across from my building. The driver stepped out first, then Matteo. Finally, the back door opened and Damian Lucchese got out. He looked like he had crossed an ocean without sleeping. His suit was still expensive, but the collar sat wrong and there were shadows under his eyes. He took one step toward me, then stopped when I took one step back. Good, at least he still understood distance. "Eve," he said. I lifted my chin. "It's Evelyn here." Pain moved across his face. "Evelyn, I know about the baby." My hand tightened around the paper bag until an orange rolled out and hit the pavement. Matteo bent to pick it up, but Damian got there first. He held it out to me like a piece offering he knew he did not deserve. Now I only stepped around him and unlocked the door to my building. "My lawyer's office. Tomorrow, 10 sharp. If you send anyone after me tonight, if you skate my doctor, if one Lucchese car circles this street, I disappear again. And next time, Damian, even your ghosts won't find me." He did not argue. That was new. Damian arrived at my lawyer's office at 9:58. He came alone. No guards in the hallway, no men waiting by the elevator, no driver blocking the street below. I checked anyway, because healing did not mean becoming stupid. Once I was satisfied, I walked into the conference room and sat beside Mara Klein, the lawyer who had built my exit while everyone in New York was busy applauding Serena. Damian stood when I entered. Mara opened the file in front of her. "This meeting is being recorded. Mr. Lucchese, you are here as a prospective co-parent, not as Mrs. Vale's husband, protector, or family authority. If that distinction is unclear, this meeting ends now." "It's clear." "Good. The divorce agreement is valid under New York law. Your signature was witnessed electronically through the port authorization packet. You may challenge it, but doing so will open discovery on the circumstances of the signature, the staged wedding, the assault at the party, and Miss Vega's fraud. I would not recommend it." "I'm not challenging it." Damian placed a folder on the table. "This is a voluntary child trust, clean assets only. No Lucchese operating funds, no port money, nothing that can be seized in a family dispute. Eve controls it. I have no withdrawal rights." Evelyn, I said. His mouth tightened. Evelyn controls it. Mara skimmed the first pages. This is generous. It's late. Generous would have been doing it before she had to run. I should have felt satisfied. Mostly I felt tired. Money doesn't fix this, I said. I know. Do you? Because for 5 years, every time you hurt me, you handed me something expensive and called it care. A necklace. Wasn't allowed to wear. A room I wasn't allowed to own. A marriage I wasn't allowed to claim. He lowered his eyes. I thought keeping your name quiet kept you alive. It kept me invisible. There's a difference. The words hit him. I saw it in the way his shoulders went still. I never meant to make you feel like a stand-in. You didn't have to mean it. You built a life where I had to live it. Mara tapped her pen. Regarding visitation, Ms. Vale is willing to consider supervised access after the birth, provided all contact goes through counsel. No surveillance is placed on her residence or medical providers, and no member of the Lucchese or Vega families approaches her without written permission. Damian nodded once. Agreed. No tracking devices. A flicker of shame crossed his face. Agreed. No gifts sent to her home. No men outside her door. No attempts to purchase the building, the clinic, or the company. Employing her. I said agreed. I looked at him. You sound offended. I'm not offended. I'm trying not to hate the fact that you had to make a list. That was the closest he came to breaking. After the meeting, Mara left us alone for 5 minutes because I asked her to. I didn't marry Serena, he said. I know. I cut her off. The winery transfer is frozen. The guard signed a confession. Serena's ledger theft is going to the council. Your parents will be forced to make a public correction. Good. That's all you have to say. What else do you want? A thank you note for cleaning up the mess you helped create. His jaw worked, but he took it. The Damian I had known would have snapped back. This one looked like a man learning that restraint hurt more than anger. I wanted to tell you I was wrong. You were. I wanted to tell you I loved you. I didn't know how much until you were gone. That is the problem with men like you. You call it love once it starts costing you something. He flinched. Eve. No, I loved you. That was my mistake. Don't turn my escape into your love story. He went quiet. My phone buzzed. Mara had sent a security alert. Movement at one of the false addresses we had planted. 2 Rossi men had just entered a rented villa outside Cascais, believing I was there. Serena had sold them the lead within an hour of learning Damian had flown to Portugal. I showed Damian the screen. His eyes hardened. Serena gave them your location. She gave them the location I wanted her to have. For the first time since he arrived, Damian looked at me the way he should have looked at me years ago. Not as fragile, not as hidden, as dangerous. I called Mara back in. Within 20 minutes, Portuguese police and an international financial crimes unit had the Rossis in custody with enough documents to make their lawyers sweat blood. Serena's messages were traced, logged, and copied to every council member in New York. Damian watched me work from the corner of the room. I did not ask for his help. I did not need it. When the call ended, he said quietly, "You planned this before I found you." I planned it before I left. And me. I gathered my folder and stood. You were the last variable I hadn't decided what to do with. 2 days later, Serena was taken into custody by Lucchese security at JFK after trying to board a private flight under a false name. She screamed loud enough that half the terminal turned to stare, but nobody stepped forward to save her. The Vegas did not want her. The Rossis could not reach her. Damian had finally stopped being her shield. Before they put her in the car, she called me from a burner phone with a voice full of panic and venom. "You think you've won? Damian only wants you because you're carrying his heir. Once the baby comes, he'll take what he needs and leave you with nothing. That's what men like him do." I looked out at the water from my office window. Maybe. That's why he doesn't get to decide anything anymore. You used him too. Don't act so pure. You took his money, his name, his child. I took my life back. there's a difference. She was still screaming when I hung up. The official correction came on a Friday morning. It called Serena's actions reckless. It acknowledged that I had been the lawful wife of Damian Lucchese for 5 years, and that any suggestion otherwise had been false. It was stiff, ugly, and written by lawyers. By noon, my mother's first message arrived. "Eve, please call me. This has gone too far." Then my father's. "We need to speak as a family." I deleted both. That evening, they appeared at my office without an appointment because people like my parents believed blood was a master. Kay. My mother entered first, thinner than I remembered, wrapped in a cream coat that made her look softer than she was. My father followed with the same hard face he used whenever he was about to ask for something and call it duty. "Eve," my mother said, tears already gathering, "how could you let strangers handle this? We are your parents." "You were Serena's parents," I said. "You were my relatives, there's a difference." My father's face flushed. "Do not speak to your mother that way. Whatever happened, we raised you. You raised me to be useful. Serena was the one you loved." "That's not fair." I opened the folder on my desk and slid the documents toward them. "These are the final severance papers. I waive any claim to Vega inheritance, assets, and family trusts. In return, you waive any legal claim over me, my company, and my child. Sign them, and we never have to perform as a family again." My mother stared at the pages as if I had pulled a weapon. "You can't mean this. Serena made mistakes, but she is still your sister. We have already lost so much." "You didn't lose me. You spent years giving me away. I'm just making the paperwork match." For once, my father had no clean answer. He looked older in the Lisbon light, smaller too, as if the room did not know it was supposed to fear him. "If we sign," he said, "the Vega name stays out of your business." There it was, not love, not regret, damage control. "Yes." He picked up the pen. A week later, Damian came back to Lisbon. He arrived at my office with no entourage and waited downstairs until my assistant told him he could come up. I had to give him credit for learning the basics of knocking. He placed a folder on my desk. "The child trust has been registered. Your company has permanent legal access to the New York port systems you built. The Lucchese family will not interfere with your residence, medical care, business, or clients. If any man under my name violates that, you get direct access to the family confidential records. Use them however you want. This gives me leverage over you." "I know. The old you would rather have taken a bullet." His mouth curved without humor. The old me thought taking bullets was easier than giving up control. I looked at him for a long moment. "Why now?" He did not pretend not to understand. "Because I spent 5 years hiding you and called it keeping you safe. I let your family treat you like a substitute because correcting them would have forced me to admit I wanted the woman I wasn't supposed to want. When Serena came back, I thought giving her a public place would settle an old debt. It didn't. It just showed everyone the truth I had been too much of a coward to say." "And what truth is that?" "That you were never the stand-in. I made you live like one because I was afraid of what it meant that I chose you after the veil came off." "I'm not going back to New York," I said. "I know. I'm not moving into your manor." "I know. If this child knows you, it will be by my rules. No family ceremonies, no oath-taking, no men with guns in the nursery." A brief, almost helpless softness crossed his face at the word nursery. "Agreed." "And me?" I asked. "What do you think happens to me?" He looked at the desk between us as if it were a border he had no right to cross. "I hope one day you stop looking at me like I'm a room you had to escape. But hope isn't a claim. It's just mine to carry." I closed the folder. "You can start by becoming someone I don't have to survive." He nodded once, and this time there was no argument hiding behind it. "Then I'll start there." Months passed. Serena's scandal took down half of Rafael Vega's old alliances. Adrian Rossi cut a deal that kept him breathing but cost him his inheritance. Serena's child was born under court protection, far from the spotlight she had tried so hard to steal. I heard all of this through lawyers and news alerts. My own life became beautifully ordinary. I hired 2 more consultants. I learned which bakery made the best custard tarts. One bought a rocking chair and assembled it badly, then let my neighbor fix it while laughing at me in Portuguese. I went to birthing classes where no one cared who my ex-husband was. They cared whether I could breathe through pain, which turned out to be a skill I had been practicing for years. Damian visited twice before the baby came. He stayed in a hotel, never asked to come upstairs, and sent one message before each visit. "May I see you today?" The first time, I said no. The second time, I allowed coffee in a public square for 20 minutes. The third time, I let him come to a doctor's appointment and watched him stand in the corner with his hands clenched behind his back while our child's heartbeat filled the room. He cried then, silently, with his face turned away. Our daughter was born just before sunrise after 14 hours of labor, and one very patient nurse threatened to ban Damian from the hallway if he asked for an update one more time. I named her Clara because it meant bright, and because she came into the world with her fists tight and her lungs furious. When I was ready, Damian came in. He stopped beside the door as if there were an invisible line on the floor. His eyes went to the baby in my arms, then to me. "She's perfect," he said, voice rough. "She is. Thank you for letting me see her." There was a time when I would have handed him my whole heart for that softness. Now I only adjusted the blanket around my daughter's shoulder and let the moment be what it was. 6 weeks later, I stood on my balcony with Clara asleep against my chest and watched morning spread over the water. The sea was gold. The apartment smelled like coffee and baby soap. Behind me, my phone buzzed. "Damian, I'm downstairs, no guards. May I come up for 10 minutes? I looked through the glass doors. His car was parked where I could see it. He stood on the sidewalk alone, one hand in his coat pocket, waiting. Once, I had begged to be chosen in his world. I had mistaken a locked room for protection and silence for patience. I had died in the cold because everyone I loved was busy saving someone else. Now I had a world of my own. Anyone who wanted a place in it would have to earn the right to stay. I kissed Clara's forehead, opened the intercom, and said, "Come up, 10 minutes." It was not forgiveness. It was my door, my life, my choice.
If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you won't miss the next one.